So what is somatic experiencing? Well, I talk with a lot of my clients about the fact that your body is the movie projector of your life. And I sit down this week with Betsy Kudlinski, and we talk about just how true that is and how somatic experiencing can be one of the therapeutic modalities that helps really heal and rewire your system. Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an East Asian medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women to live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your health, offering holistic solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show. Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I am overjoyed to be joined today by Betsy Kudlinski. Welcome to the show, Betsy.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So Betsy brings a skill set that I have wanted to showcase on this program for quite a while now. I was so excited she reached out to me. So tell our audience a little bit about who you are and the magic that you do in your work.
Magic that I do. Oh, that has so many meanings.
It does.
So I call my work renaturing, but the main stuff that I use, the main modality that I use is somatic experiencing. And that is a trauma healing modality, trauma resolution. But we use the somatic in there because it's about the body. It's not about cognitively talking about all the trauma that we've had in our lives. It's an entirely different thing. And I call my work renaturing because it's kind of finding our way back to or forward to who we were, who we could be as a whole human without the little pieces and scars that we carry now.
Ooh, I like that. So who we were before the world got a hold of us and started telling us how we should be.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes that stuff happens in utero. So it's hard to say back when we were little kids, right? Because sometimes it's even earlier than that. So it's, there's the potential who we might have been, but then we can't discount all the things we've been through, right? We're not cleaning the slate, but we're resolving it so that we can move forward with it instead of getting stuck in all of the places that we've gotten stuck and injured. So we heal the hurt. And those random metaphors that come to you, right? If I'm picturing a human with a whole bunch of needles or knives or whatever sticking out of them, right? So that's unnatural to walk around with shrapnel in you, right? Like anybody would say that's unnatural. And we take them out and we heal those hurts, right? And you're much more who you could be. But you've got those scars, right? And as long as they are smoothed out and there isn't like an abscess or nastiness, right, underneath it, then you learned from that scar, that hurt to your heart, but it's no longer holding you back. It's no longer tearing you up the way a knife that catches on everything does.
Ooh, I like that. So it remains a part of your storyline, but it no longer has such a big impact on who you are and how you move through the world going forward.
Yeah.
I like that. So let's talk a little bit more about somatic experiencing. So I'm really fascinated, and I'm actually surprised I haven't done something with this in my work because I'm fascinated by how the body holds stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing that like I find with the modalities that I do use. So pelvic steaming and acutonics, I can help the body unravel that story, create a different relationship or discernment around that story, but it's different than the way that you work with the body to work through the fact that your body is essentially the movie projector of your life and how we revisit and essentially retell those stories, whether it's a story that we can consciously tell or it is an imprint that, and that's what goes back to the in utero piece, right? An imprint or an ancestral story that has been passed along. So if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about how that works and essentially how it looks in session, how do you work with people to unlock and move these stories through their body?
Yeah, sure. So SE, somatic experiencing, I'm going to speak to it, right? And from a Western socialization, enculturated way of looking at the world, it's a little hard to understand. I like to talk about it like Shinrin Yoku, which is forest bathing, which we've heard about in the last 10 or 15 years out of Japan, or I think it's pronounced Huga, which is the Danish concept of like taking time, even small amounts of time for yourself and for your own well-being. And that is I'm sure it's an absolute butcher of the concept. But these are entire concepts in a culture that has a word, right? Like somatic experiencing, that you have to have an entire background in that culture to really understand. We can put a definition onto these words, these terms, but we don't have the cultural understanding to truly understand these concepts. So when I talk about somatic experiencing, I come to it through decades, 35 or so years of working with animals and animal nervous systems. So somatic experiencing it's about our animal, because we are animals, and our nervous systems are, I could get all kinds of scientific with the autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic, blah, 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 right? But what it is in the Western culture, we tend to walk around, and we have been taught to walk around thinking that our prefrontal cortex, the stuff right behind our forehead, is running the show, and the rest of us is just a meat robot.
It's so true.
And I know, right? Like, and even now, even with my own understanding, it's just like I fall back into that. I'm like, oh, I have to take care of my body, right? As if my body is separate from something else. When we work with somatic experiencing, we're bringing together this full understanding that it's not just our brain, our head brain. It's also our heart brain and our gut brain, where there are huge clusters of nerve fibers, right? There's actual, what could be honestly considered brains in our hearts and our guts and everything else, right? And so if we remember that somatic experiencing is trauma-based, not trauma-based, but like it's about trauma to the system being our entire animal, we begin to understand that there's like places in our body, our physical animal body, where we're holding on to things. And it could be from a car accident where there's like a seatbelt mark on us, right? Or it could be, we often talk about shock traumas when we're talking about somatic experiencing because they're the easiest ones to talk about. But it's also developmental trauma and complex trauma and emotional trauma and like all the traumas. I tend to not differentiate between big T and little t because our body holds it all the same anyway. Period, full stop. Right. And so I'm working with whatever's there. So again, right, I feel like I'm not making any sense because I'm talking about this huge concept, right? All of my work with animals has allowed me to look at an animal and see what's going on with them, right? And then I look at a human or looked at a human and I was like, they're not making any sense. They're doing something stupid. Whereas if I was looking at a human as if they were an animal, they are reacting to their current circumstance or a past circumstance. If they were a non-human animal, I would be all over it. I would totally get it. I would give them not really allowances, but I would be compassionate and understanding. But because we use words and because we are socialized to understand that we are above that base instinct, we tend to discount the way that we act and react and move. You were talking earlier about, or when you were reflecting back to me what I had said about the various wounds, right? And becoming more natural and whole again. You were talking about bringing things from the past forward, but having them not have as much charge anymore. We can learn from them, but they don't trigger us, right? And so trigger is a word that's associated with trauma, and it's a real thing. Our nervous system has developed a specific pathway, and when this happens, then we are triggered into this reaction. Mm-hmm. So that's an actual thing. And when we resolve stuff, we don't necessarily get rid of that nervous system pathway, but we can create new ones. We can, I often call it closing a loop. I like that. Close a loop that was left open, right? When the car accident happened, we didn't have time. Sometimes we didn't know it was going to happen. Sometimes we saw it happening and we didn't have time to get out of the way, right? And that our bodies were prepared. They got all prepared to do something and they didn't get to finish it. And then often our socialized or even just the paramedics, right? Like will stop us from shaking, will stop us from our bodies actually finishing the cycle of whatever should have happened, right? Like turning all the way to the left and turning the wheel to the left or slamming on the brake or pushing the gas to get out of the way, right? Those are really what we would do in session, be finishing all of those things. Sometimes it's all of them. Sometimes it's just one thing. And sometimes it's just imagining it. Sometimes it's actually enacting the moving of the body to do these things. And that is finishing something that got stuck. And I would consider trauma as places that things got stuck. Trauma's in our body, not the event. So a car accident where afterwards we sat there and shook and went through everything that could have happened and maybe had somebody compassionate with us, there might not be trauma at all, right? Because trauma's in the body. I'm going to pause for a second because I've just said an awful lot of words. And I know that you've also asked about what it looks like in practice, but I'm wondering if you can pull out like a specific question that you're interested in a little bit more of what I said.
Well,
I didn't describe clearly enough.
Well, no, it was a beautiful explanation. And you were talking about completing that cycle. And it made me think about the car accident that I had with my husband. I was starting to fall asleep in the car. Mm-hmm. And my husband was the one that was driving. And he is like the person that makes me feel safest in the entire world. And now all of a sudden we have this deer jump out in the road in front of us. We were going 72 miles an hour on the interstate. And with all of he's a motor T ground transportation in the military, right? So he has all like the special training with driving and all of these things. And thank God for that, because we didn't end up in the hospital. However, anytime I started to fall asleep for quite a while afterwards, until I went to, because I couldn't find a somatic practitioner where I was at the time. And I went to a chiropractor that does network spinal analysis, which retraces some of these pathways. So I had a similar kind of healing experience, but for a long time, you know, that floating feeling when you start to fall asleep? Well, if I was experiencing that floating feeling and I was moving in the car, I would startle myself awake.
Of course you would.
My husband kept saying, it's okay. Like, you can sleep while we go on this trip. And like every time my body felt that feeling, like I was starting to fall asleep and my body was getting really relaxed, but then the car would make that similar kind of forward and back motion that it did just before we had that accident, I would be startled awake. Sometimes I would, when I would wake up, and he's like, we're okay, babe. It's fine. Right. But he was awake and I wasn't. So like my body was trying to finish that process. I also didn't know if I was pregnant at the time that we had this accident. So like there were kind of multi-layers of stuff that was left there. And it took nervous system work specifically to be able to get me to be a decent passenger in the car again, because I felt very out of control, not driving. And I kept telling him, it's not you. I trust you. He's like, you act like you're afraid of me driving a car now. And he internalized that. And I'm like, no, it's not you. You're actually the one person I would have wanted to be driving in that situation. And you saved our lives. We didn't have to go to the hospital that night because you're so good at what you do. But that feeling just lingered in my body for the longest time until I worked through it this way. So this is what was playing in my head as you were talking. We have a lot of imprints like this. It might be a smell, it might be a sensation, it might be something that brings forward, something that hits your system in a hard kind of way. And you're right. They tell you not to shake, you try to calm down, but emotions are energy in motion. And I talk about this in my practice a lot, because women try, because I primarily work with women, they try to bottle past things in their body and not deal with it, which creates a disconnect and a disassociation. But so many women, unfortunately, have also experienced some sort of, I'm going to call it pressure for things to be more physical than they were comfortable with at whatever level that is. Yeah. And you hold that in your system. So even when you're in a safe environment in the future, your body responds the same way because that circuit was never completed.
Right. And just as you in the car falling asleep are fully consciously aware that things are fine, this is an entirely different situation, your body is still holding on to it, just like women who have been pushed beyond, just like an adult who has a specific phrase from their parents. Oh, I just have to ask, right? Anybody says in just the right tone, oh, I just have to ask. And there's bracing, there's like the reaction is going to be wildly inappropriate to whatever just happened or whatever the other person wants. And it has nothing to do with that, right? Mm-hmm. And intellectually we know, and we get frustrated with ourselves, and then it's re-traumatizing. So we have decades of, most of us, depending on how old we are, have decades of reinforcing these patterns and re-traumatizing ourselves. And then the other thing that goes with that is very few of us have had one car accident and nothing else ever bad happen to us in our lives, right? And so the way I like to talk about it, I'm going to make hand motions because that's what I do. But if you are conceived, right, with a potential for a certain amount of capacity in your nervous system to handle everything, and then let's see, maybe your mom was stressed while she was pregnant with you, and then maybe you were born via C-section. Each time I'm saying one of these things, my hands, which were really far apart from each other, are getting closer and closer to each other. So these metaphorical lines, the edges of how much we can activate, nervous system activation, and how much we can settle, come closer and closer to each other. So we had our parents get divorced when we were younger. We were pushed beyond where we were comfortable with sexually, perhaps. Or we had the car accident. And then, like, all of these things stack up, and then we didn't sleep very well last night. And we're looking through practically a pinhole at this point for how much capacity we have to handle our day-to-day lives. And a technical term for that is allostatic load, right? It's how much stress we've had all of our lives, and stress, trauma, sleeplessness, cortisol, how much time we've spent looking at the horrible news that gets us really activated, right? And then it's like we're bouncing around and we just get overblown, overwhelmed, frozen. A lot of us spend an awful lot of our lives frozen or in functional freeze. Saying we're frozen makes it seem like we can't do anything, and some of us can. That's potentially, like, I am not a psychotherapist, right? But depression looks an awful lot like freeze, or freeze looks an awful lot like depression in a lot of cases. But functional freeze, we think we're fine. We just do all the things, and we're way beyond our capacity. And so you were asking how I work with people. The first thing I do is find out where their edges are. How much can they activate? How much can they settle? How can they feel good? If they can't feel good in their body, can they feel okay? Right? Can they feel not horrible? Hey, we got a lower threshold, right? Lower threshold. And the upper threshold, how much can they feel anything? Right? And when I talk about activation, it can be good activation, joy, excitement. It can be what we might consider bad activation, anger or fear or frustration or anything, right? Anxiety, stress, right? And a lot of us just spend our lives outside of our capacity. So my first job with anybody I'm working with is finding out where their capacity is, because if we do any work outside of someone's capacity, best case scenario, it doesn't do any good. Worst case scenario, it re-traumatizes, like I was saying. It just reinforces those trauma patterns. That's catharsis. Feels good sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's not helpful at all for our nervous systems. It's just overblown again.
Do you do this through conversation, or do you do this through actual physical exercises, since this is somatic work?
Yeah, what a good question.
And now a word from our Reproductive Rebel sponsor, Embody Space. Your cycle holds wisdom, and the Embody Space cycle tracking app helps you unlock it. Track your cycle in the only fully encrypted app designed to protect your most sacred data. Get daily guidance tailored to every phase, from bleeding to blooming, with rituals, herbs, lifestyle tips, dietary support, and more. All tailored for your body's natural rhythms, because your body's story is yours alone. Embody Space, your private portal to cycle wisdom. Download now and reclaim your rhythm. And now, back to the show.
So I personally do most of my work online with individuals and groups. So it looks a lot like conversation. Sometimes it seems a lot like therapy or life coaching. I have a background in life coaching as well, but I'm constantly bringing it back to the body. There's way more space, silence involved. And so I invite, I suggest, I offer that you get a chance to feel what's going on in your body. A lot of us can't get there yet, but I continue to offer, invite, and eventually we get there. And then the body tells us what it needs. And sometimes it feels like magic. Sometimes it feels very woo. And sometimes it's just like our brains can be like, oh, this is from that car accident. But if it's from pre or perinatal trauma, our brain isn't going to remember what this is about. I can't remember the word you were using. My term is implicit instead of explicit. Explicit, we remember, right? There's a specific memory of an event in our brains, right? It's all in our brains. But implicit is something that's held that we don't have like a picture memory of it or a verbal memory of it. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the stuff that we work with is implicit memories. When it's explicit memories, it's easier for us as Western enculturated folks. So sometimes it does sound a lot like conversation. And remembering that we always work within our capacity. So we only do a little bit at a time. And for some of us, it's a very little bit, and it's exercise. I also talk about like doing sessions or groups with me is like going to the gym. Like this is where you exercise. This is where you're building new muscles. You're building new neuronal pathways, right? And when you leave the gym, you're not working your muscles the same way as you were when you were in the gym, right? And then after a while of going to the gym, those muscles start just taking over and you're holding yourself differently physically because your core is stronger, your shoulders are stronger, your hips are stronger, right? You are holding yourself differently. And that's how it is with the folks that I've worked with, right? Is you go to the gym by coming and seeing me and you gain these new neuronal pathways, and over time, your capacity to feel good and bad expands, and you're able to take things on without getting triggered, right? You're able to handle more stress and activation, whether it's excitement or anxiety. You're able to be in situations that you couldn't before. You're able to fall asleep in a car again. You're able to meditate. A lot of us really can't meditate, and we continue to try, and we put ourselves into freeze or a survival state, right? So we're increasing our nervous system capacity, our window of tolerance or zone of confidence, depending on who you're talking to. And we're resolving implicit and explicit stuff in our body. And it can look like conversation. It can look like guided meditation. I don't call them guided meditation. I call them embodiment exercises because it gets us into our body and moves. Sometimes it is standing up. I have space behind me so that I can stand up with people and we can move around in our space, push on a wall, or feel our feet on the floor.
Being able to be grounded is important in some of these exercises for sure.
Absolutely. I didn't have that capacity when I first started this. I had no idea what grounding felt like. I was like, what is this grounding that you speak of? Same with boundaries. Mm-hmm. The fuck is a boundary? Excuse me.
No, we swear on this show. It is totally fine.
Well, I probably should have asked that to begin with.
No, I swear for emphasis and clarity on this show, that is totally fine. But it's true. Most of us are like, what the fuck is a boundary? Because all of those things be so porous where we're like, yeah, oh, I could take that on. I can take that on. Yeah, I can do that for you. I don't want to upset this person.
Yeah.
I don't want to let them down.
And the boundaries is one of the major things that comes out of this, because if you know where your edges are,
Yep.
they're sacred to you. And that's all boundaries are. But if you don't know where your edges are, you're constantly in overwhelm, you're in functional freeze, you have no boundaries. How can you understand what a boundary is?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've seen in some of my most chronically ill clients that their number one issue is boundaries and being able to exercise them in a way that they feel empowered and they don't like, I see it so much with mothers too, because like we have this whole martyrdom culture around motherhood, right? Like you're supposed to sacrifice yourself on the altar of motherhood in order to be a good mom. And how dare you want to take a bath alone? That's so cringy. That would be a word that my kids would use, cringy. And, we need these things to be able to show up and be our best self, to be our best mother and what we bring to that table. And it's very counterintuitive. It's like that whole idea of putting your own oxygen mask on first. Like I say that and people go, why wouldn't you put it on your child first? It's like, well, I've got 4 kids. If I don't put it on myself first, I'm not going to get through all 4 of them. I'm sorry, I'm just not. And we don't think about it that way because our culture has made it so ingrained and we've been so socialized that having boundaries, as particularly as a female body, is a bad thing.
So true. And you mentioned chronic illness, and that's, I don't know, probably half of my clients have chronic illnesses. I have fibromyalgia, right? Like, as far as my understanding for my own personal self, I'm not a medical doctor. Everybody's going to say something different about these different diagnoses. For myself, my understanding is that my fibromyalgia is like literally a trauma expression of me stuffing everything down. My body continued to try to talk to me and I continued to ignore it. And so it's coming out this way in incredible fatigue, widespread body pain, myofascial misery, and all the other things, migraines and IBS and joint, all the things, because it's so much unclosed loops, right? There's just so much somaticized trauma that's never been resolved because I could never feel my feelings, never understand that, never integrate what just happened, never, just move on, just move on. It's not about you. It's not about you, right? Mm-hmm. Male socialized person. Whew. And I don't want to say anything. The male socialized humans have their own set of stuff, and a lot of it expresses similarly, and it's different.
It's different because our hormones are different, right?
Our hormones are different. Our socialization is different.
Yeah.
There's a lot of differences. And I have a female, it was socialized as female. And so that's how my body, and I have female hormones, and that's how my body responds.
It's amazing also how our hormone expression does influence things, right? So if you were socialized as male, anger was an acceptable emotion, crying and sadness was not. And for women, socialized women, same thing in reverse. It's socially acceptable to cry, but don't be too emotional. But being angry, forget it. And a lot of times I'll see my clients when their guard comes down and they start apologizing profusely for whatever emotion came up because it's not quote unquote okay, or this might be too much information, but, and it's like, no, there's no such thing as that here, because we're looking to truly get to the root of why you're having this series of symptoms. And yes, there's some physical pieces to this, but there's emotional and energetic pieces to this too. It is not the way we've been socialized in Western culture that there's a pill for a symptom. And some people even try to use herbs for a symptom, which is that same pill for a symptom mentality, rather than going, this herb has an energetic function, it has a physiological function. What is the root cause of this thing that is expressing itself in your system? And for a lot of female-bodied people, you're going to see it in the reproductive system first, because survive and procreate is all your primal brain can handle. Survive will always win. Because what is the point of procreate if you don't survive?
I've been super stressed for the last 4 months, super stressed for a bunch of reasons, right? And I've been handling it much better for myself than usual. But my period right now is the first time it's been on schedule in 3 months.
Yep.
It's continued to be 4 days late the last 2 periods because of my stress level. And I'm just aware, okay. And then I felt like Friday when it came, I'm like, yeah, I am feeling better, aren't I?
Yes, because our body gives us an organic computer printout and says, how have you lived your month this month? You haven't slept enough. You've been too stressed. You've been eating stress for breakfast. How are you managing this? And then at the end of the month, well, the beginning technically of your next month, you finish your hormonal month. And the beginning of the next one, you get this computer printout that goes, so here's what happened during this month. Here's your invitation to maybe do this next one differently. Yeah, I feel this deeply. So, spoiler alert, I'm having Betsy back again because I want to talk about how this concept actually dovetails with perimenopause. And where we hold these loops in our system for so long, and then we get to perimenopause and people go, what the fuck is happening inside of my body right now? I feel like my emotions are all over the place and my cycles are all over the place. And what is happening? And it has to do with this nervous system piece, and where we haven't held these boundaries and we haven't loved ourselves in the intention-filled ways that we've needed to. Right. So we are going to do a whole deep dive into that. So I'm not going to, but spoiler alert, that's coming, guys. So make sure to subscribe and watch for that episode to come out. But I had a mentor earlier on in my life that used to say, our body is the movie projector of our life. And I always loved that concept because I felt like it really embodied the threads, conscious or unconscious, that have been imprinted that we pull through our experience. And sometimes when people have had a trauma in their past and they think they've done all the therapies, and I'm not knocking therapy.
Oh, no. Every modality out there has a place as far as I'm concerned.
100%. 100%. But they think, well, I've done years of therapy. I should be over it by now. Right? See, that laugh is my expression of this too, because a lot of times I find that my clients that do have the conversation and they're doing something to physically work through this in their nervous system, which is these exercises that Betsy's talking about. This is why I wanted to have her on the show, because there are so many people out there that go, yeah, I've done therapy. It didn't really work for me. Well, it's not that it didn't work. It's that it only addressed a piece of the whole puzzle. And the whole puzzle is the fact that you have this intellectual expression and you have a nervous system expression. And it's kind of like when you go to a Western doctor and one person handles your ears, nose, and throat, and one person handles your reproductive organs, and one person handles breastfeeding. Because for some reason, the person that handles the baby coming out can't handle the breastfeeding part, which boggles my brain. But it's all part of the same experience of postpartum. Yet we're talking about separate professionals and you have to have a whole care team, which you need a whole care team anyway. But when you're really, truly I need to get to the root of the fact that this experience is hanging me up. Because I have clients that come in like that. And they're like, I know that I have a thing or a series of things. And I usually see it when it comes to fertility, right? Because remember, survive and procreate. Survive is stuck in the on position. So fertility ain't happening. That's usually where I see it. Probably the loudest and strongest.
Yeah.
Is that there's something being held in that part of their body that is triggering survive.
Yeah.
So the procreate doesn't happen, or it doesn't happen successfully.
Yeah.
So this is why, again, I really wanted to have Betsy on the show, because I feel like when people are doing the therapy, I think it's important to have somebody to talk to.
Absolutely.
But I also think that having somebody to physically work through this, to move what is stuck in your nervous system. So Chinese medicine would look at it as a qi stagnation. Your energy is stuck.
And there's a touch component of SE. I can do it virtually, right? Like I could touch you, Adrienne, even though we're a lot closer than we thought we were. But I work with people in the Netherlands and I put my hands on them, and it's not transferring energy. It's holding the container for the body to do what it needs to do. And you can also find SE practitioners. I do it like I said, most of my practice is online, but I do work in person and I have a massage table, and it's just an extension. My presence holds a container and my hands can hold a slightly more concentrated container for your body to close the loop.
I love that. It's the whole, from my sound healing background, it's entrainment, resonance, and frequency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And co-regulation, right? Like I co-regulation and entrainment. And when I run groups, 3-4 meetings of the same group of humans becomes a group nervous system.
Yes.
And then you have a different container that is exponentially greater than the sum of its parts. And that's why I run groups, is because it's, again, magical.
It is. And when you're working in this, like, it was the same thing with the network's final analysis chiropractor that I had the privilege of working for. She had multiple tables in the same room because everybody's nervous system, like, you had this collective field.
Oh, I love that.
And it was so cool because she might be hands-on with one person and somebody else's body would move down at the other end of the room. And when I started doing sound baths, because I really thought about going back to school for NSA for a long time. And then I'm like, oh, that's a lot of school with kids, because I had like little kids at the time. But I see it in sound baths too, where I fill the room with frequency and I am holding the container with my frequency.
Yeah.
And the magic that comes out of that. Like, I use like Accutonics hand chimes, and I'll use certain frequencies and combinations of frequencies to create movement. And like, I had one group, the person organizing it said, we don't communicate very well. Is there any thread that you can pull in around communication? I was like, hell yeah, here we go. We're going to bring Mercury into this, right? So I had like Mercury and Venus, so communication out of love, right? And then I had Mercury and Hygeia, communication at the highest, purest resonance level. And there were other things in it too, but like, those were just a couple of the combinations that I put into it. And we got all done. And like, they collectively like sighed at the same time, like, which was so cool. And then they all sat up at the end, and instantly the one who was allegedly the hardest communicator in the whole room was the one that first started talking and started unpacking like childhood stuff and all of this lived experience stuff. And other people chimed in, and it ended up being this absolutely magical container for people to communicate in. I think we sat there for like almost 2 hours, which I was like, I'm just going to hold the space and let you heal, do what you need to do. Yeah. And it sounds like that's what happens in your sessions also when you work with groups.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. People just come out of it. Most of my groups are resilience groups, but I also have like a learning one where we learn about the nervous system and somatic experiencing and renaturing. And then I have other groups where it's just connection, entrainment, co-regulation. But the resilience ones are like, hey, we're going to talk about hard stuff, but first we're going to feel okay. And then when we talk about the hard stuff, we'll keep feeling okay. And then you have this embodied memory, like an implicit memory that it can be okay to be talking about politics, talking about climate change or collapse or being in community.
I love that. I love that. So I could just like pick your brain about this for so long because I love this work. And I think that it's something that desperately needs to be tapped into more because any one modality, we're only doing part of the work. And what you said about shaking really struck me because it's how our nervous system works some of that energy through. So again, coming back to that idea of chi stagnation, right? Energy gets stuck in your system and it needs to move. And Qigong has this concept of shaking leaf where you shiver almost like a leaf on a tree with a little bit of a wind. And in any sort of a stressful situation, like my kids laugh at me at this point because like I'll just like start to shiver and they're like, oh God, mom's got the twitches. And I'm just like, I'm doing this so that I can maintain my composure and not yell because parenting teens is a challenge for anyone listening who has them. It is definitely an experience in and of itself. And being able to shake and move that kind of energy that you can feel getting pent up and being bottled in your system, you're able to come at whatever that challenge is with a completely different energy, hold space differently. And it's one of the things that I have found, particularly, I have a blended family. My older three are all teenagers now, and my older two I adopted from my husband's previous marriage. My youngest in that three was from my previous marriage. My husband and I just had a little guy. He's 7 months old now, but because people are going to look at this and go, but I thought you had a baby. So yeah, this is the configuration of my family. And dealing with the tougher teen stuff, because teens are much harder to parent than little kids. Little kids are very straightforward. I have a need, please fill my need. Right. And when you get to the teenage stuff, it's like technology makes parenting teens so much harder. But, if you come at tough conversations and tough situations with frustration and anger, they just shut down and they don't listen to you. Yeah. But if you can get that stuck energy out of your system, it's amazing how their communication with you will change. Because you're literally holding the container differently because they can feel what's going on in your field. If you're irritated, they can feel it. Even if you don't sound irritated, they can feel that energy.
Oh, yeah.
And now we will take a short break from our episode to share an offering that will take your healing to a whole new level. How would it feel to stress less, feel more spaciousness in your body, all while reducing physical symptoms? I can tell you from personal experience, it's one of the most empowering and freeing experiences one can have. Rebel Remembered is a year-long journey using goddess archetypes, body wisdom, and ancient modalities to bring a level of health to your body unlike anything else. As a Chinese medicine practitioner, it has always been clear to me that the emotional body is at the root of physical symptoms in the body. This program is truly holistic, addressing physical symptoms by exploring spiritual and emotional themes, much like this episode. This opportunity only opens once a year, so be sure to get on the waiting list for when enrollment opens this fall. The link is in the show notes. And now, back to the show.
And they might not even understand what they're feeling, but their body does. Body knows it's unsafe and they are not going to engage. But if you are engaged, If you said earlier, like motion, energy needs to stay in motion, right? And when we freeze up, so often irritation, anger, stress, fear of not doing it right, right? We freeze up and we speak from a place of stuck energy. They're going to feel that and they're going to get stuck too. They're just going to check out and be like, this ain't safe.
When my kids were younger, I used to get them to actually like shake and shiver and be able to like move the things. And I'm like, okay, now let's talk about it, right? Now they just look at me like, Mom, you're a weird woo. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe someday they will come to appreciate it when they have their own kids. But it really is powerful when you change the frequency that you're walking into a situation with. So somatic experiencing is so powerful, not only in how you are able to meet challenges and have the capacity for resilience, for being able, because I'm just thinking about it as a parent, right? And there's a lot of people listening to this that are parents, but whether you're a business owner, you're a parent, or you're just like juggling way too many hats, like it all feels the same in your nervous system, like you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. And it doesn't matter whether you can actually see the tiger behind you. There's a meme that I think is funny about something about finding your motivation or your motivation finding you, and it's a dude on a bicycle and he's being chased by a bear. Like that's like what your nervous system does when you have 100 unanswered emails in your inbox, right? It can't tell the difference. It just goes, survive, damn it. And like you do the best you can to survive. But, in those challenging situations, being able to hold that frequency at a much lower, less loud decibel, people in that conflict situation feel that difference as well.
Yeah.
So it's a really powerful tool for your own healing. And again, I keep bringing it back to being a parent because that's the world that I'm living in right now, but healing that next generation too.
Healing the next generation, healing the people around you. If you want to have a political discussion with people who don't agree with you, if you can do it from a regulated state, it's going to be an entirely different conversation than if you are doing it to browbeat them with what you believe they're doing wrong, right?
It's so important.
Yeah. We can change the world, Adrienne.
One conversation at a time.
Well, one nervous system at a time.
Yes.
And it ripples out like that, right? That entrainment, that co-regulation, it ripples out.
It totally does.
You're raising different humans, and they're going to be different in the world.
Well, and it's been interesting to see in my own household too, because I didn't have a biological hand in the development for the first couple of years, birth through age 3 with one of them and birth through age 5 with the other. And how the things that were imprinted prior to my coming in really do come to the surface during the teenage years, and how that presence and that resilience in my own nervous system has made an impact on our ability to have conversations, questions that I know others have had a hard time fielding with their own kids, that I've been able to meet my kids with compassion and, that's probably not the decision I would have made. However, what did we learn from this? Instead of being like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, it's hard. And I mean, sometimes you feel all those things on the inside, like, what the hell were you thinking? But if you meet them in that space that way, then their nervous system goes into that fight, flight, freeze, and they don't hear anything. They tune you out. You can see it. Their eyeballs just go, I'm done.
Yep.
So this has such incredible power to change the collective. So I'm so grateful for you coming on, Betsy, and sharing this wisdom and sharing your talents and expertise with our audience. If this feels like a modality that you have been looking for but didn't know existed, which I'm sure there's a few of you listening to this that are like, oh my gosh, where have you been all my life? How can they find you, Betsy?
I am BetsyKudlinski.com. I am on Facebook just with my name. I have a mailing list that you can get to through my website. I see individual clients. I have groups that are running all the time. And if the stuff you see on my website doesn't resonate with you, find somebody else that's trained in SE. Seriously, SE, there are a gazillion practitioners out there. Everybody has their own main modality that they work with, that they use SE. Some traumahealing.org is the Somatic Experiencing International website, and it has a practitioner directory on it. And yeah, I mean, I'm awesome. There's a lot of other awesome people out there too.
Thank you so much. And like I foreshadowed already, Betsy will be joining us for another episode. So be sure, particularly if you're in that 34 and older category, to subscribe so that you can make sure to get all of the good bits from our perimenopausal conversations. So thank you again, Betsy, for joining me.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
And until next time, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist Adrienne Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at MoonEssenceMe on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.